Welcome to another edition of Wildcat Country. Eric Cohen and Shane Dale. And before we get going here, we were going to record this on Sunday night. And if you're in the state of Arizona listening to this, you'll understand that there were a lot of storms that kind of interfered with not only Shane's and my recording experience, but our guest, Jeff Dean, the voice of Arizona Stadium and McHale Center, had some trouble as well. So we had to record this 3 days later just because that's how the schedule shook out. But Shane, glad we've had a chance to kind of reminisce, and I shouldn't use that word, soak in the performance that Arizona put forth on Saturday night. If you were to grade it on a school level, A through F, how would you grade Arizona against Mississippi State?
All right. Well, before we begin, I want to give a genuine hello and welcome to all the North Dakota State fans who are about to troll our YouTube comment section. I guess it's nice to be worthy of being trolled again, which we've actually already received some nice comments from our friends in Fargo, but that's been the experience the last couple of weeks. So I guess it's nice to play relevant football again. So hello and welcome. To answer your question, somewhere in the C to D range, I guess a C, all things considered. I think we learned Saturday, Eric, the heartbreaking truth that Arizona is not going to win the Pac-12 and go to a Rose Bowl this season. Okay. Team's still very much a work in progress. We got a glimpse of, I think, what it can look like when it all comes together in their win against San Diego, and even the way they started against Mississippi State. But I think this was a classic case of Mississippi State, a team that was just more experienced, more poised, with a much more seasoned quarterback. And in that light, the result was predictable. You go back and you see all the chances that Arizona had to win this game. They lost by 22 points, but they legitimately had chances to win or at least go ahead at different points. They, clean up a couple of mistakes. They're right there at the end. It's easy to see how that this game could have gone very differently a year from now. A year ago, they would have lost by at least 40 points. Next year, maybe they win it. As it is in year two of one of the biggest rebuilds in Power 5 college football in recent memory. The result was somewhere in between. And yes, it was frustrating to watch, but it certainly wasn't surprising in that context. So I guess I'd give them a C.
Well, I would give them a C as well. That was the grade that I was going to think, because they weren't bad the whole game. They weren't awful, but they weren't great either. I mean, they had their chances, and you and I will talk about that. You bring up next year. Well, Arizona's going to get their chance to have revenge against Mississippi State because they will be down in Stark Vegas, right, or Starkville as they call it, next September. I don't know if I'll be making the trip. Fortunately, that there were no cowbells that were allowed into Arizona Stadium on Saturday. I saw some outside, but thank God we didn't have to hear that, because it would have been annoying and it would have made me leave much earlier than the 11:40 when I walked out of Arizona Stadium, which, by the way, is tremendously stupid. But these 8:00 games are absolutely horrendous.
Well, tell us about the atmosphere, because I wasn't there, but a good turnout. The crowd looked like it was going crazy after Michael Wiley scored that touchdown. It looked like it was going to be a good night.
Yeah, it was when he scored that first touchdown, it was a holy smokes moment. Like, I would use another word for that. Hey, we've got something here. Maybe this team is actually for real. The stadium was rocking. I mean, it wasn't a sellout. I thought it would be, or close.
It was close. Dave Hickey said it would sell out. Obviously,
it was what they say, 40,
just under 40, just under 46, I think.
Yeah,
but a big improvement, and it just shows you. I think we've mentioned this a bunch of times, or at least I have, is that the Arizona football fans are very much like Phoenix-based, Valley sports fans in general. They're not going to show up just to see a losing team, but if there's a chance of winning, which, after the San Diego State game, we thought there would be, they'll show up in droves and they'll be loud. And that's how it's going to be from here on out. If Arizona if they put together some wins, I know Jetfish thinks it should be the other way around, but it's just not in Tucson.
No. And the interesting thing is, Shane, and I know it's because of the game time, so I'm not going to harp on it too much. Arizona is the one place that I go where the fans literally in the second half, it's like half. I mean, regardless of whether they're winning or losing. And I assume that's probably because it's an 8:00 game. You bring kids, they're not staying up till midnight, whatever. It's just disappointing. Like, stay through the third quarter. With that said, there was still an okay crowd at that point. That new Zona Lights thing that they did, replacing the alma mater and the Don't Stop Believing. It's actually kind of cool. Like, that was pretty. I like that. It at least doesn't suck the air out of the stadium like it was last year. I mean, it was literally, they would play that alma mater with the chorus, and it was like it would just suck the air. And then nobody knew this Kenny Chesney song, and it was dreadful.
But they got rid of that, right?
Yeah, so it was a "Don't Stop Believing," and they put on these lights that you hold up your phone, and they play these. It's actually kind of cool. So they did a nice job with the game day experience, and then of course our buddy Jeff Dean, who we'll speak to on the public address, pretty good. The intro, pretty good overall. I'll give it a B+ for the environment at Arizona Stadium.
For the ambience.
For the ambiance, yes.
Yeah.
All right, let's get right into it, Shane. It's Buy or Sell, presented by our friends at Ice Shaker. You have one Ice Shaker. I have the other this week. Go to iceshaker.com. You can buy, I don't know if you can buy these that I'm holding up, but the ones that Shane has, you can buy them. Just search Wildcat Country. You can get $5 off by using the promo code Wildcat Country, capital W, capital C. So, number one, Shane, Arizona's biggest weakness on Saturday night was its inability to run the ball effectively outside of the one Michael Wiley run on the first drive. I think that was 30-some yards of a 41 net rushing yards.
I'll buy that. Absolutely. Yeah. They never got their running game going, and Jed Fish stuck with it. He's had balanced play calling the first two games, but the run game after Wiley's 34-yard run, it just wasn't there. DJ Williams had 10 yards on 7 carries. He had a great game against San Diego State. I will mention, and this was not a running play, but I want to mention Jonah Coleman. He had I would say the hustle play of the night on that interception, because Arizona was driving. They were down 8 points in the late third, early fourth quarter. It was a nice looking drive, and then Delora throws the pick. It looks like it's going for a touchdown the other way, and Jonah Coleman tracks the guy down like DK Metcalf did with Budda Baker a couple of years ago. Tracked him down and prevented a touchdown, and it gave Arizona's defense a chance. I want to call them Washington State because Mike Leach is their head coach. Mississippi State, it gave them a chance to hold Mississippi State scoreless. They scored on a 4th and goal, I believe. So, that was tough, but you see why Jonah Coleman's out there. But yeah, as far as the running game itself, as far as offense, it was rough. I think that the Judge is playing the right guys. It will be interesting to see if he throws a couple other guys in the mix, Drake Anderson, Stevie Rocker.
You didn't see a lot of Speedy Luke, by the way. I think he played like 1 or 2 plays. It was a little disappointing.
I'd like to see him get involved a little bit more, but I don't think it was because of the guys in there. I think it was more Mississippi State's defense winning the battle at the line of scrimmage, and Arizona's offensive line, like we talked about, was a bit of a liability in that regard.
Yeah, I think the offensive line was pretty bad. I think it wasn't that Jaden Delora was great, because clearly he wasn't. He had a rough game, just was making poor decisions, let's say, had open lanes to run on scramble plays and instead tried to make a hero throw.
Usually it's the other way around. Usually college quarterbacks run too fast. First, right. And with him, it's the other way around. It's interesting. Yeah,
it was very interesting. I just was disappointed. I really, we saw the running game be so effective on the first drive. It's funny on the Wiley touchdown. I'm watching with the people sitting next to him, and they hand the ball off, and it looks like he's getting stopped. I go, no. He breaks loose and runs to the house. He has really gotten a lot better this year. Really impressed with him, Wiley. I could see why the coaches liked him in camp. DJ Williams was 7 carries, 10 yards. Just did nothing. It was disappointing. And maybe that's on some of the running backs too, that they just weren't finding holes. But that's where you play a guy like Speedy Luke and get him out in the open. And they tried some kind of like Wildcat type plays with Jamari Joyner. Concept was okay. I didn't love it.
Yeah. And I think it's also easy, Eric, for guys, especially this young, to read into their own press a little bit. You had the reigning offensive player of the week, defensive player of the week. They had a big week 1 win. They're going into their confidence sky high against Mississippi State, which is fine. But I think you can, Jed Fish and the coaching staff, I'm sure, warned these guys, don't take them lightly. I'm sure they didn't take them lightly. I just think that maybe some of these guys thought it was going to be like that every week. You experienced that first week in San Diego State, and then you run into an SEC team that's bigger and more experienced and punches you in the mouth. And if nothing else, it's a good wake-up call.
Number 2, Shane, and I was going to use this as a bonus, but I'm just going to throw this in there. I thought Arizona played well enough to cover the spread. They had 3 chances in the second half inside Mississippi State territory and came away with 0 points inside like the 40-yard line, all 3 times, including when Noah Fafita came in at the end. And we'll get to that later on. Buy or sell, Arizona probably should have covered that 12.5 point spread. We like to make picks at the end, but I'm still kind of bitter about this one.
Well, yeah, they probably should have. The 19 points, or was it 22 points rather? It's hard to say they should have covered 12.5 and they lost by 22. But
3 times inside the 40-yard line.
Yeah. Yeah, and
in the second half and got 0 points. Zero.
Same problem they had last year. I don't think it was the same reasons as last year, but
No.
it was a game that probably was a little bit closer than the score showed in terms of total yards, in terms of takeaways. The defense overall, those first couple of drives were rough, but they gave the offense a chance to win. They actually, with the fumble and the big return that led to a touchdown, the couple sacks in the second half, they got after Will Rogers a little bit, not as much as they should have, but the defense, I thought, especially against that kind of offense, did enough to give the offense a chance to win. So, even going back to your grading system, I give the defense, they missed some tackles, but overall, all things considered, I give them a solid B.
I would too. I think that's a great point. We're agreeing way too much.
I'm sure
in all seriousness, of course. Listen, Arizona played pretty good game defensively, and I think Mike Leach was frustrated. The Wildcats defense, forced a couple of turnovers, which honestly we're not really used to, because last year I think they only had 6 forced turnovers. Something was really bad.
Yeah,
and it just wasn't a lot without looking at it offhand. This year they already have, I think, at least 4. Which is great. The defense is making plays. Just offensively, they just look lackadaisical. Jacob Cowing didn't play well. T-Mac was fine. T-Mac seemingly, now I was driving home when Noah Fafita came in, so I didn't see, the game was over. They weren't going to cover the spread. I was like, I'm out of here. It looked like T-Mac and Noah had a nice little thing going.
Well, and that's not a surprise. They know each other well. And if Fafita ends up being a starting quarterback at some point this season, you're probably going to see more of Keon Burnett for that reason too.
He hasn't played. I haven't seen him at all.
Yeah,
I haven't seen him at all.
Well, maybe not this year, but Tanner McLaughlin's been
pretty good.
Yeah. So,
number 3, Shane, buy or sell, Jayden de Laura.
I'll buy him. Look, Jayden de Laura is who he is. He's a young, confident guy with a ton of potential, and he's still got a lot to learn. He got rattled by a veteran, more experienced defense, tried to do too much himself, especially in the first half. He's probably the kind of guy, like I said, who reads into his own press maybe a little too much and thinks he's arrived. And I'm sure he reveled in being the Pac-12 Offensive Player of the Week. As long as he's not too stubborn, truly listens to the instruction from Coach Fish and others, I think he'll be fine. I didn't see anything in that game that's not correctable. I would rather a guy fail for decision-making reasons rather than he just doesn't have the talent, like with Arizona's number of quarterbacks last year. Not the case with him. I think he'll be okay as long as he's open to instruction, to working on things, not thinking he knows it all. And I think he's smarter than that. So I think this will be a good learning experience for him, so long as he chooses to view it that way.
I'm going to go a hold here. I know this is buy or sell, but I'm going hold. I'm not willing to, trash Jayden de Laura. It wasn't his best game, wasn't probably the worst he's ever played in his college career. It just made you think, you saw Noah come in at the end of the game. I know it was garbage time, and you're like, this kid can sling it. He's confident.
Yeah.
I'm just going to say this. If Jayden plays a few more games against teams that Arizona should beat coming up in the next few weeks, the next 3 games especially, and he doesn't play great, I think Noah probably deserves more of a look. I think
it's going to take a lot for de Laura to be benched this season, and probably probably an injury, which I hope, knock on wood, doesn't happen. But I think that's what it would take, unless he's just dreadful and he gets worse. I don't think he's going to be replaced.
Let me say this though. I know that I'm being very reactionary based on what we saw on Saturday. With that said, Jayden de Laura, no offense to Gunnar Cruz or Will Plummer, is light years better than what Arizona had last year.
Infinitely, yes.
And no offense to Jordan McLeod, but he's a lot better than Jordan McLeod too.
Maybe based on what I saw, I think he's better. I don't know if I think Jordan McLeod was better than the other 2 guys you mentioned.
Well, he was, but I also think Jayden de Laura is a different level. And by the way, this Arizona team in person in the 2 games that I've seen them is at a different level than I've seen them in the last few years.
Sure.
They just, they look a lot more talented and a lot more confident. So we're going to find out what happens starting this Saturday. Number 4, Shane, scheduling North Dakota State, in my opinion, has to be one of the dumbest decisions in football scheduling history without knowing much of Arizona's history prior to the 90s. This makes no sense whatsoever. Why would you schedule a team this good when you're looking for a gimme victory?
Well, I don't know if they're necessarily looking for a gimme victory when they schedule this.
You should. With your 3rd game at home, You're looking to sell a few tickets and get the hell out with a win.
I will say that this would have been a nice year to have one of those games.
Yes.
I like it, schedule NAU this year. I think they would have won by 30 some odd points or more. It would have been nice to have that game just to get for a lot of young guys to get their feet wet. With that said, I know a lot of people think it was dumb. I don't mind it. I think most college football fans are educated to know North Dakota State, even though they are in the FCS. They're legitimately good. If you put them in the Pac-12 tomorrow, they're probably in the middle at least. So I don't mind it. I really don't. I don't, if the narrative of, Arizona's going to lose at home to an FCS team, there's North Dakota State and there's everyone else. So and that from that perspective, I don't know if it's a game I would have scheduled, but I don't necessarily mind it either.
I hate it. I'm buying the crap out of this one. This is so bad. It makes no sense to schedule North Dakota. There's no, and we're going to talk about this with Jeff later. As far as I'm concerned, you beat North Dakota State. The casual Arizona fan, which you figure the majority of the people in the stadium are casual fans, right? They go, "Who is this team?" They don't know North Dakota State from NAU.
And the fans around the stadium will educate the other ones who don't know.
Will they?
I think so.
I
think so.
This is a game that for the casual Arizona fan, they're like, "Oh, why would you schedule it? You must win." So if Arizona were to lose on Saturday, it just depresses the fan base that much more. If you play Oklahoma State and lose, okay, you're like, all right.
If it's a blowout, I would say I would agree with you. If it's a close game, I don't necessarily.
But some fans, Shane, are going to equate an Arizona loss on Saturday, if that were to happen, to what happened against NAU last year. Now, you and I know it's not the same. They should, but they don't.
Yeah.
There's the top 15, 20% of us that follow Arizona sports. Those people listening to the show,
giving more fans more credit than that. I think more fans have heard of North Dakota State and know that, guys, Carson Wentz and Trey Lance and others have come from there. So
Shane, most fans are blind in general. And I don't mean that literally. I mean that as far as their rooting loyalty, they just want to see wins and losses. And they stack it up. They hear USC. USC could be 4-8. They go, "Oh my God, it's USC."
Yeah.
UCLA.
There is some. I understand where you're coming from, but the majority, at least we're disagreeing now, right? But yes. I just don't think it's as large a percentage as you think it is.
I hope not. And I will just say that every person that is listening to this podcast right now is not one of those people that I'm referring to. So thank you for listening to Wildcat Country.
It's nice save. Nice save.
No, but it's true. They're a lot more educated because they're listening to us and they're able to formulate their own opinions. They know that this is not an easy game for Arizona.
Okay. Fair enough.
Number 5, Shane, Arizona must beat the Bison in order to have any prayer of 6 wins in a bowl game this season by yourself.
I'll buy that. I think they need to win it to get the 6. I know it's early in the year and usually I'm not that, like, to use your word, as that reactionary, but looking at the schedule and what we already know about the 2022 Arizona Wildcats, a path to a 4-5 conference record seems a lot less daunting than a path to a 5-4 conference record. We already broke down their schedule, but you look at games against Cal and Colorado, maybe ASU, who knows? And then maybe there's a win in there during that brutal 5-game stretch we talked about. In that context, if you're hoping for nothing more than the lowest of all low-level bowl games, which would be huge for this program considering where it's been, I do think they have to beat North Dakota State on Saturday.
Well, I think number 1, I think I made too many buy questions. So that's on me. I think everything's buy. But I'm going to buy this with a caveat, Shane. Not only is this game important, I think Cal and Colorado are as well. I think the next 3 games, Arizona must be 4-1 for us to be talking seriously about a bowl game.
Maybe.
If they're 3-2, we can have casual conversations, but I think you got to win the next 3 games. And then we can start saying, Shane, do you want to go to the Jimmy Kimmel Bowl in LA? Or, we can start plotting it out, right?
Sure. Yeah, I think
because I can see an easier path.
Yeah, that's fair.
Coming up next, let's talk to our buddy Jeff Dean, get his reaction on Mississippi State and find out his thoughts on North Dakota State. Is this the dumbest scheduling decision ever for Arizona football? You'll find out here on Wildcat Country. Scooby, we sent you an ice shaker. They are a sponsor, courtesy of our buddy Chris Gronkowski. You have it right there.
I love my ice shaker. Fun fact: when I trained with Glenn Gronkowski, when we were trained together, people thought I was the other Gronk brother. So it's kind of funny. But yes, I love my ice shaker. It is very good. I use it every day. I am a veteran to the ice shaker game, by the way.
What's up, Wildcat Country? Chris Krakowski here. Use coupon code Wildcat Country at iceshaker.com.
Always glad to welcome back our friend, the voice of Arizona Stadium and McHale Center, Jeff Dean, who also was the originator of this podcast/show way back in the day. I think, almost 5 years ago. So, Jeff, we haven't had you on in a long time. So, first of all, glad to have you back. Secondly, quite the atmosphere in Arizona Stadium on Saturday night. It's actually kind of fun there for 2.5, 3 quarters, right?
Man, it was electric. I got to be honest. I mean, I don't think I've ever seen the student section that full. Even, I'm trying to think back to before I was PA. Because I've been season ticket holder for 16 years now, and I mean, other than like the big Oregon game or the game we had against ranked teams, USC or obviously the Territorial Cup games, I've never seen a student section, the Zona Zoo, that full before that early. I mean, there were 9,000 students there half an hour before kickoff, and they were still lining up to come in. So it was a great atmosphere. Jed Fish talked about it, how great the atmosphere was and how much he appreciated the fans for showing up. And I thought it was great considering, it wasn't the worst weather in the world, but it was hot and it was humid. So.
Jeff, like Eric said, thanks again for joining us. We were going to chat Sunday night, and then the hurricane that ripped through Phoenix kind of changed everything, but we appreciate it. So Mississippi State game, and I guess as tight a nutshell as you can cram it, a couple of things you liked, and then obviously, a couple of things we all didn't like, but what were your big takeaways from your vantage point?
I think it's pretty obvious this team has got a very solid pass defense. We knew that coming in. We knew that with the two Christian Rolla-Wallace and Christian Young, that we're going to have two of the best DBs in the entire conference this year, maybe the best corner in the conference this year. So we knew that was going to be a strength of this team coming in. It's good to see that, that they were up to the challenge. C-Row didn't even get challenged in the first game against San Diego State. They didn't even throw at him. They threw at him one time, and it was a ball that was 7 yards over his head. So it was good to see Will Rogers, who's a potential Heisman candidate, this year for college football, to see him challenge C-Row. And, he really only got beat once, I think, on the 6 targets that were thrown at him. So, that was good to see. And also, this team, and again, Mississippi State's not a team that's going to get big chunks of yards because of the way that they run their offense. But again, this team has only given up one big play all year, one play of 20 yards or more, and it was a 20-yard play in that game. So, it's good to see that the team is not giving up big plays, because last year it was just, 65, 70 yards, 60 yards. It was just, it was nonstop. So those are good things to see. The two things that I wanted to see them do better that I thought were crucial to win the game against Mississippi State were tackling. I thought the tackling was very poor on the back end. The receivers were able to break multiple tackles, running backs able to break tackles. And you could just really see the difference between SEC recruiting and the first-year Pac-12 recruiting class. They were just bigger, faster, stronger than our boys were.
You think that the Mississippi State's win had more to do with just the talent level or the experience? Because my thought is, Arizona's probably the middle of the pack now in terms of just overall talent. I think they improved that much. Experience, I think they're at the very bottom. Do you think that youth and inexperience is maybe the main reason that they came up short?
Yeah, I absolutely think that's the reason why. You're talking about a school that's been recruiting in the SEC. They started, I think of the 22 starters, 16 of them were 4th or 5th year seniors. Meanwhile, Arizona has 50 brand new players on this program. So right. That stood out in droves. Not so much the size and the athleticism, things like that. I mean, those things are going to develop as Arizona's players get older, but the experience level and the age level, just, quite frankly, between the two teams was the main difference in that game, in my opinion.
Well, what about the rushing attack, though, Jeff? I mean, Arizona, outside of Michael Wiley's run in the first, possession of the game, did absolutely nothing on the ground. I mean, DJ Williams was great against San Diego State and had 7 carries for 10 yards.
Yeah.
I think Shane's concern about the offensive line finally came to fruition. Do you think that's a 1 week, hey, we're playing an SEC team, or is this something that, Arizona's going to have trouble running the ball all season based on what we saw on Saturday night?
I think, obviously they're going to improve as the season goes on. I think it was kind of a bad opponent at the bad time. You got a really, a large and experienced and fast and physical opponent early on in the season. And I think that was the main difference in Arizona's running game. This one, one of the things that I noticed when I went back and I watched the game, I tried to watch as much as I could on Sunday while I was kind of watching some NFL as well. It's just literally, I mean, there was a lot of lack of focus just on a whole team level, from the quarterback to the tailbacks, to the offensive line, to the defensive side, to the wide receiver. I mean, there was, to the coaching staff. I mean, the sideline had some mental mistakes as well. And one of the things that I noticed about the offensive line is there were just a lot of missed assignments. There were, on a trap play, for instance, you never ever let the nose tackle run free. I mean, you have to smack that guy in the face. And Arizona ran 2 trap plays in that game where they just completely neglected to block the nose tackle. I mean, just ran right past him, and he ended up making the tackle. So, I mean, those are just mental and focus errors that they will clean up. I guarantee it.
One thing we haven't talked about yet is Jaden DeLora. It was a very weird game that he played. He had so many opportunities, in my opinion, to run. I mean, there was so much, open field in front of him, and instead he tried to make these heroic throws. Did his performance concern you at all, or did you look at it just kind of as a just not his best night, we move along?
I mean, obviously not his best night, and Jed Fish did a great coaching job of in the press conference saying that's on me, that's my fault. My concern is that when there's 47,000 people in the stadium screaming at you because the most obvious thing for you to do is run, and what you do is throw the ball into triple coverage. I mean, that's a problem. And that's something that has to be discussed between Jed, the offensive staff, and Jaden himself, because you can't have the entire world knowing that what's the obvious choice there is to run for 8 or 9 yards, give yourself a shot at a 4th and 1 or a 4th and 2, as opposed to throwing a 30-yard deep ball into triple coverage off your back foot. It's just, those are just little mental errors. And these are the things that I talked about when we found out that JDL was coming to Arizona. I remember watching him at Washington State, and I said, he's iffy at best decision maker. And again, he's a freshman, last year, and you would expect some of those things to improve, obviously, in his sophomore season. And I think it will. I think it was just a situation where he knew that the running game wasn't going. He knew that there were some mistakes. They knew that they need to make some big plays against a team who's just playing cloud coverage. So when you have a chance to go over the top against a team who's just playing zone umbrella type, the way that Mississippi State does, to try to take your shots, it was just a bad decision. It was, again, lack of focus, I think, from a whole team level, and that's on the coaching staff, to be honest with you.
So we got North Dakota State coming in, Jeff, this Saturday. They've won 6 straight games against FBS opponents, although their last game, I think, was in 2016. So it's been a while. They have a new head coach since then. Your overall thoughts on North Dakota State? They've started off as well as you would expect. I think they have respect nationally, even though they are an FCS team. But what's the scouting report on them?
It's interesting when you talk about a program like North Dakota State. I mean, when I was coming out of high school, the program that I wanted to go play for was Appalachian State, because at that time in the mid 90s, they were competing for championships at the Division I AA level at the time. And I wanted to go play for a championship caliber team. It didn't matter, who they played or whatever. You're going to get their best shot every single time they went out, and they were going to compete for championships. And North Dakota State has won 9 of the last 10 national championships at the FCS level. They are the Alabama of the FCS. They just know how to win. They have a culture of winning there. They have a culture of winning championships. They have a culture of winning big games. They know exactly what they're doing. One of the things that they do so well is that they have their identity figured out well before they step onto the field. And that's such an important thing for a group of 22 players trying to tug the rope in the same direction, is to have your identity figured out. So it's going to be a real challenge for Arizona this weekend, because, what you're going to get in North Dakota State is a team that, they're not going to throw the football a whole lot. I think they've thrown the ball 28 times all year in their first 2 games. But I believe 11 different players have carried the football for them this season. So that's going to be a test. Where's it coming from? They run kind of that wishbone style. They run sometimes a double fullback, H-back type offense. That's tough to deal with. There's a lot of blockers. There's a lot of hat on hat kind of football. So it's going to be up to solo tackling. So, guys like Jerry Roberts, guys like Colby Cage are going to step up into those gaps and make single solo tackles to be able to make things happen for the Arizona defense. Otherwise, it's going to be a long day of the defense out there.
Yeah. I think we all agree on that. A lot of people, including my co-host, who I've seen shaking his head when you're talking about North Dakota State, think it was not wise to schedule this game in the first place for Arizona. There's not much value in it. I don't necessarily agree, but what are your thoughts on that?
I think it's always good to bring in a championship caliber program, whether they be an FCS program, whether they be, what you would consider a mid-major school that's won their conference the last 7 or 8 years or something like that, or whether you bring in a major power school. I mean, I think you get more value playing at the point where Arizona is right now. You get more value playing at North Dakota State than you would get playing at Georgia. You play Georgia, you get beat 49-0. What do you learn from that?
Yeah.
You go and play at North Dakota State, a team that's going to come in here to try to shock the world. They're not going to bring the biggest, baddest, fastest boys on the planet, but they're going to bring a winning attitude. And when you play against that, you learn things about that. You say, God, these guys were small. It's like, I hate going back to high school, but I played at a power here in the East Valley. We were bigger, faster, stronger than most teams we played against. But the only team that we ever lost to was Mountain View. And they were always smaller than us, but they were always a hell of a lot more disciplined than us, and they were always competing for high school state championships. And we couldn't figure out why they were beating us. They just had a better winning attitude than we did. And sometimes it's better to get a learning experience in that aspect than just to go out there and play the champion, the world champion, and get your butt whipped. So
now I'm with you there.
I like it.
Yeah, all right, so I'm with you there. That makes sense. At the same time, though, look at this from a fan's perspective. You beat North Dakota State. Most casual fans are going to go, okay, you beat it. You beat who? Who's his team? If you lose to them, they're thinking the sky is fallen. To you and I and Shane, who understand football and how good North Dakota State is, okay, this is probably better than at least half of division FBS opponents, right? But as far as I'm concerned, if you're looking for a gimme win, a team that you're paying to come to campus, you should at least get a W and use this as a stepping stone into Pac-12 play. I don't view this game as that. This game is way too difficult for just a stepping stone game.
Well, that's why it's up to us, and you guys to spread the word, spread the word from the media and the experts out there to let the fans know, the casual fans know that this isn't some slouch. I mean, North Dakota State sounds like a whole bunch of nowhere, but these guys, they're champions. Won 9 of the last 10, and there's a reason why they haven't played an FBS school in 6 years, because nobody wants to schedule them, because nobody wants to get beat by North Dakota State. So I applaud Arizona for scheduling the game. Now it's on us to spread the word just how good of a program they are, but it's on Jed and the boys to go out there and get a W and represent the Pac-12 and represent as a power FBS program.
So, all right. So if you were the athletic director, or you were in charge of football scheduling a few years ago, knowing North Dakota State's level of success, would you rather schedule this game or a lower level team from a Conference USA, Sun Belt, AAC type of conference if you're paying them the same amount of money to come in? North Dakota State or, Louisiana, or somebody like Louisiana Monroe or somebody like that?
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. I guess, you mentioned the Sun Belt, who got 3 big victories over the weekend when they went into, Marshall went to Notre Dame and won, and App State went to Texas A&M and won. The Sun Belt was winning games, but, here's the thing. Those players in the Sun Belt and those programs, they're not going to win any kind of a championship, so to speak of. I mean, they may win their conference, but what's the value of losing to a Louisiana Monroe or a Marshall as opposed to getting a team who has the reputation of being the cream of the crop? I mean, I have some friends actually that went to North Dakota State, and they were saying, it's that the fans, they have a hard time getting fans at the game because they know it's going to be a 44-0 blowout no matter who they play. I mean,
I wish we had that luxury.
I know, right?
Wish we had that problem.
So I think that the value of scheduling a championship caliber program, regardless of their level, is better than just paying some team to show up for a W.
Jeff, I think maybe the big goal from a lot of fans' perspective this year is maybe could this team get to a bowl game in year 2? And I know that that's a lot to ask after a 1-win season last year, but there's certainly a path there, at least after beating San Diego State. Through 2 games, are you more confident or less confident that you were before the season that they have a path to getting possibly to 6 wins and getting to a bowl game?
Well, honestly, I think we're right. We're exactly where I thought we would be. I thought we would beat San Diego State, and I thought we would lose to Mississippi State. I mean, that's just, that's just me being honest, knowing, exactly what was in front of us. As far as North Dakota State, I honestly have no idea. Like, this is This is the big question mark of the season. I think I have a pretty good peg on what the rest of the Pac-12 schedule is going to bring to us. I think we're going to get a W against Cal. We're going to get a W against Colorado. We're going to get dubs against those teams. How do we win these swing games? These unknowns like the North Dakota States. A game against UCLA. How do you know whether we beat UCLA or not? Those kinds of things. So we're right where I thought we would be. I still don't know if this is a 6-win caliber team, but based on what we see this Saturday, because you always want to see how you improve from first game to second game. Obviously, that wasn't improvement; it was a regression.
Yeah.
So how do we improve from second game to third game after seeing all the mistakes that were made in the second game? Because honestly, when you look back now, the first game kind of looks easy to you, right? I mean, it looks like that was just an easy win for them. They coasted in that game, really. Mm-hmm. So it's how they fight back after some adversity. I think you're going to see that on Saturday.
All right, my last question for you, and just because I got you here, I know we're gonna talk hoops as more as the season comes around, but I don't think we've talked to you since Arizona kind of finalized its roster for this upcoming season with all its transfers and reclassification. Your overall thoughts on the men's basketball team going into the season? Can they be maybe not as good as last season, but is it possible for Tommy Lloyd to do it again with this group?
I think what we saw last year was the realization of what the kind of talent that Sean Miller had brought in, and that talent all kind of came together at once. And I think a lot of people were underselling that talent. Everybody, I think, except for me, who I thought they were a top 10 team from the get-go, that kind of undersold that team. I didn't expect them to be as good as they were because they just dominated everybody that played. This year, I think, is going to be a different experience for Wildcat fans and for basketball fans. First of all, it's a tougher schedule. It's a much more difficult schedule this year. Yep. And second of all, they've got to look at what Tommy Lloyd can do with an Arizona program. So you're going to see a different look. I mean, there's obviously all the different Euro players and stuff on this team, so that's going to give them a different look. They're all very skilled, and we know that Euro players at a young age at the collegiate level can be a bit of a roller coaster at times. Sometimes they're high highs and they have sometimes really low lows. It's all going to come down to the point guard position, honestly, the point guard position, and if we can keep Umar Ballo out of foul trouble and keep him healthy and keep him on the court. I mean, those are going to be the two biggest things for me in getting consistency out of this team this year.
All right, so two questions, and as always, Shane and I thank you for coming on with us. Number one, I asked Shane this question the other week, so I'm going to ask it to you. By the end of November, Arizona will have played 7 men's basketball games. Who will have more wins, the football team or the men's basketball team?
Gosh. I mean, I can't imagine the basketball team losing more than one game. So that would put them at 6-1 at worst, 7-0 at best. And I just said that I don't think that this is quite yet a 6-win caliber team. So I'm going to say going to December that the men's basketball team will have one more win than the football team.
Okay, that's a fair answer. Number two, what is the ceiling for this year's men's basketball team? I know we have a ways to go before things start. The Red-Blue game coming up here at the end of the month. What is the ceiling? How good is this team? How good can they be?
Man, the thing is, it's so different for me because, over the last 15, 16 years, I've been able to watch a lot of their recruits play high school basketball. And I know what they're getting. I watched Dalen Terry when he was 14 years old playing AAU up here. I don't know much about the guys that are coming in, to be honest with you. I haven't seen a whole lot of them. So that's a really, really difficult prediction for me to make. Let's just go ahead and make it the Sistine Chapel. Let's paint the ceiling as a national championship and see what happens, because you just never know who's going to make that Final Four, who's going to win 6 in a row once you get into the dance and win that championship and cut down the net. So you never know which team it's going to be.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be a Jeff Dean appearance on Wildcat Country without extreme optimism about one or both sports. So we always appreciate having you on. It's been too long, and we look forward to doing it again soon.
My pleasure, fellas. Anytime. Hope to see you guys soon at the game, and hope to see all the fans down there on Saturday night screaming loud for their Wildcat team. And don't take the bison with a Z Don't take the Bison lightly. They are a tough football team, and so come on down and enjoy it.
Thanks to our friend Jeff Dean for joining us. Always great insight from him. Shane, I'm really excited because last week in our picks, I went 7-2-2 against the spread, and you went 3-6-2 against the spread.
A lot of overtime games that went against me last week.
Yes, they did. I now have a 1-game advantage on you. I'm 10-10. You are 9-11. But we are both 1-1 straight up and 1-1 against the spread when it comes to Arizona games. So we have an 11-game slate to pick. We will go through these fairly quickly. Oklahoma is giving 13.5 at the Scott Frostless Nebraska. Who you got?
Yeah, part of me thinks Nebraska comes out inspired the same way Arizona did against UCLA after Mike Stoops got fired, but I can't roll with Nebraska right now. I'll take the Sooners.
Good pick. I'm going with Oklahoma as well. I could see Nebraska made this a game last year, but I just think this team has already given up. And I think Oklahoma, this is a statement game for them and Brent Venables. I think they win by at least 2 touchdowns. This one seems easy. Okay. Cal, who plays Arizona next week. This is an interesting game for them at Notre Dame, who's 0-2. Does Marcus Freeman get his first win as an 11.5-point favorite?
Yeah, I think so. And Cal let me down last week because I thought they would cover against UNLV, and Cal's just not good. So Notre Dame has to look better than they did against Marshall. They're going to come out a little PO'd, I think. I'll take Notre Dame.
And you're taking the 11.5 points as well.
Yep.
Okay. I am as well. I don't think Cal's that great. I think I see a 2-touchdown spread here. This is where Notre Dame has to play better, Shane. They have to show up. They've had, the Marshall loss was inexcusable. You lose to Cal. Marcus Freeman may not make it past his first season.
They'll beat Cal. Just a matter of whether they cover the spread. I think they will.
Oregon is only a 3.5-point favorite against BYU. Now, I understand the Cougs beat Baylor last week in overtime. Did not cover the spread, but a win's a win. Or actually, you know what? I miscounted our records. I gave BYU a win, but they did not. No, they did cover in overtime. I'm sorry. Okay, they did cover. They won by 6. Okay, yeah. So forget that. So BYU wins by 6 in overtime. They're 2-0. They're ranked. Oregon is a 3.5-point favorite at home. I feel like this is light. I'm taking Oregon with the points. I think they win by a touchdown after all that mix-up. What do you got?
Well, we are continuing to agree so far. I'll go with the Ducks. I still don't buy BYU is that good a team. Maybe I'm just being stubborn. And they're going to be playing in Eugene. I think Oregon wins this game by at least a touchdown.
I actually think BYU is really good, Shane, and I think they are a prime New Year's 6 contender. I just don't think this is a good spot for them after an emotional Baylor game. So I'll take Oregon as well by a touchdown. Interesting game here. Penn State is a 3.5-point favorite at a kind of a disappointing Auburn team. Auburn's undefeated, but they just don't seem to have a lot of talent. Auburn lost last year. It's a 3.5-point dog. I like him to win the game outright, just not sold on Penn State. Do you agree or disagree?
I agree with you as well. It just seems counterintuitive to take a non-SEC team on the road against an SEC school. Penn State has had a week off before this one, but I think Auburn covers at home.
Mississippi State, who we saw last week, is a 2.5-point favorite at LSU. It's never easy to win, on the Bayou. Brian Kelly, I think his second true home game, first SEC game. I like Mississippi State, Shane. I think this team is for real. I was not sure what they were going into last week. Having seen them in person, I'm sold. I like Mississippi State to win and cover here.
Same again. Yeah, I think Mississippi State, even though they're not ranked in the top 25, I think they are that good. And LSU will have had 2 weeks to stew over that loss to Florida State, but I think I'm going to go with Mississippi State. I like take them in the points.
Washington is 2-0 and looks to be reborn with Coach Kalen DeBoer coming in there and Michael Penix Jr., the former Indiana quarterback. Michigan State is ranked in the teens, and they are a 3.5-point underdog in Seattle this Saturday night, the ABC primetime game. Who you got?
Yeah, neither team's been tested yet. I think Michigan State was one of the big winners of the transfer portal, especially on defense. I think they're going to find a way to win this one on the road. And cover.
Really? You like Mississippi?
Well, Washington's favorite, so they'll cover either way. But yeah, I like Michigan State outright.
I think Washington wins by a touchdown. I'm just not sold on Michigan State. I'm not sold on the Big Ten, Shane. I mean, look at Wisconsin last week, and we'll talk about that after the pick segment. But I mean, Wisconsin at home against Washington State, and you lose outright. Outside of Ohio State, I just don't. And Michigan, I don't think the conference is that great. I think Michigan State's about to get exposed. They don't do terribly well, by the way, coming west of the Mississippi. I don't think they've won a true they haven't won a true regular season game in Pac-12 territory since like the 50s or 60s. Can't remember the year. Okay. Yeah, I put it in my Sportsline column. I did the homework on it. So you can check that out. Go to sportsline.com.
Good
plug. Check out my college football picks. There you go. Yeah. College football picks column. I like Washington on the money line in that column. I like Washington with the points for the purposes of you and I. Okay. I'm big on NC State this year, Shane. I think they're pretty good. Texas Tech, I faded them last week against Houston, and they won the game outright in overtime or double overtime, which was really disappointing. NC State's giving 10.5. Who you got?
Yeah, another game I got wrong thanks to overtime didn't go my way. But you know what? I picked against Tech last week. I'm going to go with them this week. You know, they surprised me without their starting quarterback against Houston. So, you know, and I think NC State struggled to get past East Carolina. So I think Texas Tech covers.
Well, we pushed last week because Texas Tech was a 3-point favorite against Houston. I like Texas Tech with the points here. I think they cover, but NC State, you know, my fondness for them. That game against East Carolina where they won by 1 in week 1 was pretty ugly, but going with Texas Tech here with the points. I think NC State wins by a touchdown or so. So we agree in all but one thus far. All right. Miami goes to Texas A&M, who had an inexcusable loss to Appalachian State last week at home. Just mind blowing. A&M still a 5.5-point favorite. Are you taking the Aggies to bounce back?
Yeah, I think they'll bounce back in this one. You know, they laid a complete egg against App State, but I can't see them doing that 2 weeks in a row. Miami's beaten up on a couple of nobodies so far, but I think A&M gets the win and covers.
Shane, my parents went to Miami. I want to believe that the U is back. And you know what? I'm just not buying A&M. I don't know that maybe Miami's going to win this game. Sure, I'll pick them outright, but they're definitely going to cover the spread. I'll take Miami plus 5.5 here. I think A&M is demoralized. I was a lot higher on them before the season. They don't have an offense, and Jimbo Fisher never has a good quarterback who's not named Jameis Winston. So not impressive for A&M. I'm taking Miami. San Diego State, who we saw in week 1, is going to Utah. Utah is favored by almost 3 touchdowns. It's 20.5 is where we'll give the line here. I'm not impressed. You know, you tweeted out a couple weeks ago that you didn't think San Diego State was very good. I know they killed Idaho State last week, but I actually agree with you, Shane. I don't think they're that good. Utah wins by 3 touchdowns or more and covers. How about you?
Yeah, this kind of line is tricky because I think it'll be an easy win for Utah, but you know, San Diego State scores a couple times in the fourth quarter, garbage time, they could end up covering. But I'm still going to go with the Utes to cover at home. I just don't think, like I said, I don't think San Diego State's very good this year.
So, yeah, the one thing about this game last year, San Diego State beat them by 2 in triple overtime. I think Utah wants revenge. The other interesting game here, it might be the most interesting on this slate here. Fresno State, who cost me last week. It was almost a great pick until the last play of the game when Oregon State ran it in. They're a 12.5-point underdog at USC. This is a weird line to me because USC is blowing everybody out. And I know the game against Stanford was only a 13 points difference. The game was not as close as the final score indicated. I think 12.5 is light here, Shane. I think USC wins by 3 touchdowns against a good Fresno State team. What do you got?
Yeah, for better or worse, I'm buying into the USC hype, which includes what Mark May told us a couple of weeks ago about them possibly being a college football playoff team. I think it's a close game for 2, maybe 3 quarters, but I think USC wins by at least a couple touchdowns.
All right, before we make our pick on Arizona, North Dakota State, quick buy or sell. USC, college football playoff team, as you just discussed. Mark May said it to us. Are you buying very serious college football playoff team or selling that notion?
I'll buy that they're serious until I see otherwise. I haven't seen anything to suggest that they wouldn't be, and that they were overranked to start the season. Certainly, they beat up on Fresno State. I'll continue to buy it.
I'm going to buy it as well. I think they're one of the top 5 teams that I have watched this year. They are uber impressive, and Lincoln Riley knows how to coach. One other buy or sell here, quick, Shane, before we go to our final pick, and we're not doing ASU Eastern Michigan. Sorry, but I'm not picking anything involving the MAC in this column unless a team is really good, and Eastern Michigan is not. Buy or sell, Colorado is by far, Shane, the worst team in the Pac-12.
I'll sell by far. I think Cal is close. I think they're actually pretty neck and neck for the worst team in the conference.
Really?
Yep.
I'm gonna buy it. I think Colorado really is bad. There's a reason that Minnesota is like a 26.5-point favorite at home against Colorado. If Arizona doesn't win that game, we're talking Jed Fish hot seat. I'm
No. Okay,
I'm kidding.
Good.
Okay. All right. Finally, we're going to go to the game that we all care about here on this podcast. If you fast forwarded now, here it is. North Dakota State at Arizona. Now, Shane, they do not have a spread for this game because it's an FCS opponent against an FBS opponent. But the spread that I had heard is North Dakota State -1. We'll find out on Friday or Saturday what that is. But for the purposes of this particular podcast, we're going to pick it straight up. I'll let you make the pick first. North Dakota State at Arizona. Who wins? And give me a score range.
Yeah. Well, first of all, the fact that North Dakota State's won their last 6 FBS games means nothing because the last one was in 2016. They had a different head coach. That head coach is now at K-State, so it doesn't matter. But they're still very good. They're always very good. They might be especially good this year, at least on offense. They're outstanding on the offensive line. They got a ton of experience and depth there. Their quarterback, Cam Miller, they don't throw much like Jeff said, but he doesn't make a lot of mistakes. He doesn't beat himself. They did have to replace their entire defensive line this year. Their secondary is experienced, very deep unit though. I think Arizona has to establish the run game. Our guy Blair Willis noted that all those games North Dakota State won against FBS opponents, they were very good against the run. So I think Arizona has to establish a run game. I think they have a chance to do that this week, certainly better than last week. When I woke up after the Mississippi State game, I was going to pick Arizona to win this game by a field goal. Mm-hmm. But the more I read about North Dakota State, the more I'm convinced. I've convinced myself it's not going to go Arizona's way. I think it's a close game most of the way, but my score prediction is going to be North Dakota State 34, Arizona 24.
Wow. You know me, I am Mr. Optimism when it comes to Arizona football. I love my Wildcats. I always think that this is the year that something good is going to happen. I'm not saying that it isn't, but I just don't have a good feeling about this game. I'm fine being wrong. I hope I'm wrong. I don't see it. I'm going to say North Dakota State 27, Arizona 21. I'll be there. I hope I'm wrong. Something doesn't feel right about this game.
But you know what, Eric? Just the fact that we picked North Dakota State isn't going to stop the folks in the YouTube comments from saying that we've disrespected their team somehow.
No, we picked Mississippi State last week. I know
we picked it. We both picked them last week, and they're like, "Oh, you're all taking Mississippi State lightly." I'm like, "Did you listen? You're just coming over here to troll because we both picked Mississippi State. We both picked North Dakota State this week." So
yeah. By the way, the YouTube comment section of Wildcat Country is wild. So I know we post this on Twitter, but go ahead and check things out on YouTube because things got a little crazy with those Mississippi State fans. But great show. Thanks to our buddy Jeff Dean for joining us. For Shane Dale, I'm Eric Cohen. Thanks for listening, and as always, bear down.